if there's vague language, we're not supposed to interpret the contract. We're supposed to act upon a written instruction.
So what things do agents do to create liability for you guys that just infuriates you?
When agents maybe try to cut corners and just say, oh, you don't need that. Don't worry, I've known these guys my entire life. You don't need that information. They are who they say they are. That's when the liability occurs. Unfortunately, some people look at us as a vendor, and it's just something that it's a necessary part of the transaction.
Welcome to Signature Buzz, your fast-paced weekly real estate sales meeting.
Hello, Signature Real Estate Group, and welcome to our next episode, the best episode of the Signature Buzz. And I am joined by a very special guest, someone I have known in the industry for, I got to think, almost 20 years, because you have been around a long time in title, and that's Ryan Pulliam. Ryan is the sales manager for Tycor Title. He's just a great guy. And first off, congratulations on your engagement.
Oh, well, thanks, Chris. I appreciate that on both me being a great guy and the engagement. I'm a lucky guy too, I guess.
Yes, you are, and you should know that. So, Ryan, tell us a little bit about your background in title and just kind of how you came to the position that you're in now.
Yeah, so I started actually in the title plant when I was 18 years old. It was my freshman year of college. My dad wasn't really hip to me kind of going out partying. I was pledging Sigma Chi fraternity, so said I'd go get a job, and he got one set up for me in a title plant. So I would go in the morning, search out chains of title, run the class, come back and finish it out. So I spent a year in title, then a year in customer service, and then a position in sales opened up. I was 20 years old, and I asked for it, and they got it for me. And now this is 27 years later. I'm the vice president and sales manager at Tycor Title. I'm also the assistant county manager. So it's been a long ride, but I'm happy to be here.
That's awesome. Well, like I said, I remember back in the day, you were always there as a helpful person to provide great value. Didn't matter where you worked, you were always the go-to. And now you found a great home at Tycor. And I know that it sounds like you've met quite a few people that you love to interact with at Tycor. And that's where you met Ashley, right?
That is, yeah. We work together, and now it's happily ever after.
Awesome. Well, we're going to jump right into some topics. I produced a series of questions to really kind of dive in and understand the title industry, the things that you're seeing, and just give our listeners some more information. So really in the last kind of 5 years, how has the title industry changed, and what things are you seeing happen?
So I think like a lot of industries over the last 5 years, COVID was 5 years ago. It's crazy to think that. And I truly believe that it kind of helped us realize that the way we were doing business wasn't necessarily the only way to do business. We are able to work remote. We are able to have folks kind of jump in, utilizing technology to help out. And so I do think that it's kind of come a long way to where we were, to where you had a super unit with an escrow officer, maybe 5 or 6 assistants just banging out files. Now we have production units and have really streamlined and become more efficient. And COVID made us do that. So change is never easy, but when it's kind of forced upon you, I think we can look back and say that's one of the really good things that happened through COVID is we became more efficient. And, obviously when an industry is booming over the last 5 years, as real estate has been, we've seen an influx of new real estate professionals jumping in because they think, hey, there's an opportunity. Same thing with title. We've seen a number of different title companies come to the market in the last 5 years, wanting to get in when the getting is good. And so that's kind of diluted the talent pool a little bit. But aside from that, we still do things the same way we have been doing it for a long, long time.
Yeah, I can imagine that the technology in your industry has just changed as much as ours has. And what are just some misconceptions real estate agents have about the title process as you see it?
So I think, Chris, one of the common misconceptions is we're just here to kind of check a box. And it really is. I mean, when we're providing title insurance, we want to mitigate risk as much as possible to ensure that when a buyer takes possession to a property, they have clear and marketable title, and nobody who has a financial or a vested interest in the property is going to come up and, try to file a claim against the property. And so I think sometimes agents, because they don't see kind of how the sausage is made, it's just we're a formality. A prelim's generated, we go through the process, we close, and it's a done deal. But they really don't understand the work that's involved in making sure that the title is clean and the curative process to get there.
Yeah, it's interesting when you say it that way, because I know a lot of times, the agents are engaged with the client for 60 days or maybe 70 days as the deal completely goes through. But that title insurance is going to go through that property no matter how long they keep it to that point, and everything that's happened before and will happen after. And so when things happen about boundary lines or loans that someone got that didn't disclose and those things, you guys are still working on things because of that insurance down the road.
Oh yeah, I mean the typical claim is filed about 5 to 7 years after the policy is issued. So those are when things kind of pop up. And yeah, I mean, we have a full-time claims department. We have claims attorneys in Omaha, Nebraska, and it's people think like, okay, do we really need this? But you don't need insurance till you need insurance, right? And so when that does pop up, you want to make sure that you have a reputable company that's insured the property, and you can file a claim, and your interest either financially or ownership is secure.
So, we've heard a lot of agents and a lot of people out in the marketplace talk about the market shifts and interest rates and what the Fed's going to do in the elections. And every year we see, 29 to 40,000 transactions happen. How do those market shifts and changes really affect the title company?
So we obviously want to trade as many properties as possible. I mean, we want to do, if prices go up, prices go down. We're not really concerned about that aspect of the business as much. We just want transactional volume to increase. And so, yeah, when rates rise and properties rise, like we've seen it right now, there's a little bit of a cool down on the transactions in the market. And we've seen it for, 23, 24, and now seemingly in the half of 25. It hasn't really started to be that juggernaut that a lot of us thought this year was going to be. So we have to kind of just manage to the market. I mean, we can't control the market. We can only manage to what we do. So we try to bring as much value to our agents as possible to allow them to get more transactions that we'll get in the door on the escrow end. And we have to just obviously take a look at our staff, take a look at our expenses and all those things, because we obviously have shareholders to answer to, and we want to make sure that we keep our stock price up as well.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I'm going to go off of our kind of predetermined questions just a little bit. And, I forget a lot of times that you guys are in a sales business as well.
You do.
Right? You provide a great service. You're a great company. But with these market shifts, do you find it easier or harder in your sales process to connect with agents or companies and things as you go through it?
It's much more difficult because one, we have to go out and we have to meet an agent and rely on the agent to transact. So either get a buyer or a seller. And then when they do that, we have to rely on them to actually be able to direct the deal over to us. So it is really, we could spin our wheels a lot. And sometimes, you meet with agents, and you and I have both been in the business long enough. When somebody comes and sits across from you wanting to interview and go to Signature Real Estate Group, I'm sure you can say, this guy's not going to make it, or this gal's going to be an absolute rock star. So you kind of just, when you get to the time of the business that we've been in, you know who to spend time with and who not to, because it always seems as if the ones who have the least amount to give are always the ones who are taking the most. So it is tough, and these markets make it difficult because, again, we're never going to ask an agent to lose a deal over title, but they're less likely to fight for us when a listing has been sitting 60 days and they're not going to counter title or anything along those lines. So it is more difficult in markets such as this when deals just aren't, bouncing off the walls.
Yeah, no, for sure. So one of the things that we've seen, and I just heard of an occurrence the other day, unfortunately, is we've seen a massive rise in fraud scams and wire fraud, and some poor buyer sending their funds to the wrong place, the wrong account. What are you seeing, and what can agents do to be more vigilant and help with it, help defend against it?
It is one of the biggest topics that we have that we try to tend to talk about. We try to do a quarterly fraud class just to make sure that people are still aware, because as soon as we do something to kind of stop them from doing it or create an issue or a roadblock, they find a way around it. The fraudsters do. So, wire diversion is still huge. Initially, it started, they were targeting the title companies because we were sending out proceeds upwards of $500,000. Then when we kind of got hit to it, they started attacking buyers. So what you can just tell your agents, or assume that your Gmail, your Yahoo is compromised. I mean, somebody's watching it. People don't jump in, ask Chris Bishop and start sending those emails. They'll just glean information from you corresponding through the transaction and wait for that perfect opportunity to strike. So if they can see the purchase contract, they can see the settlement statement, the prelim, they understand what's going on in the transaction. And a couple of years ago, there'd be some red flags on the email correspondence, misspelling of words, grammar that really doesn't jive for how we talk over in the States. And now with ChatGPT and other open AI models, they can throw those emails in, have them cleaned up, and it seems polished, it seems professional, and you would never know it. So the biggest thing that we just really stress to our clients is tell your buyers never to get wiring instructions off of an email, ever, ever, ever. I don't care if the Pope emails you wiring instructions. Don't believe them. And so, because we have to stop it, it really is it's amazing how many times we beat this into the buyers, but then they still go off and do it. And I mean, it's amazing. We get a report on a monthly basis about our company nationwide and how many instances of attempted diversions there are and how many actually get diverted. And it's heartbreaking because, like you said, there's a buyer maybe been scrimping and saving to finally experience the American dream, and all of a sudden that's gone in an instant and the money is gone. And then recently, one of the bigger things that we've seen is deed fraud, typically on vacant pieces of land. So big red flags to your agents on those are somebody calls you kind of out of the blue, or doesn't call you, but emails you and says they need to sell vacant land. They're desperate, lower, less than market value. They never want to communicate on the phone. Typically, if they want to go to the WhatsApp, and those are the ones, the deed fraud now, that are tough, and they're springing up left and right.
Yeah, we've actually experienced that a few times, and I look at the emails because the agents are uploading emails. I mean, these are convincing emails of I have this issue and that's why I can't do this and the whole thing. We even had instances of using ChatGPT. Someone created a fake trust, and I mean, it has pages. Like, it told create us a 75-page trust, right, and make it look legit, and like it can do that. And so, but you're absolutely 100% correct. If they would have just asked to meet in person, or asked to meet by Zoom, or asked for photo ID, probably 90% of the thing would have gone away and they would have been able to perform. And so it's about doing a little bit of due diligence on the agent side. I know that we as a company and we as an industry require a wire fraud disclosure notice be signed by the client. I tell my agents, you do not take earnest money and send it to the client. It's all done by escrow in their secure system. We don't take client personal financial info. I mean, I don't need it. Like, if they need to give financials, give it to the lender. I don't need it. If they're going to do anything with money, talk to the escrow officer. I don't need it. And I know that's kind of me throwing my hands up saying I don't want to be in the middle, but it's a way for me not to have the issue, because they wouldn't be able to say Chris sent this to me because I don't need it.
Right. Well, I mean, and the more stuff is set, the more likely it is to be, to be looked at. And then again, they just take that information. And so, what you talk about, meeting via Zoom and, call me in person, we've actually implemented a program called MyTech. And so any absentee owner, meaning that if you don't live in the property that is being sold, we send a letter to both the property address, the mailing address, and then we have the seller has to complete a MyTech, and they upload a picture of their ID or their passport. It takes facial recognition to say, yeah, that's actually that person, and it verifies that it's a legitimate identification as well. So we're really trying on the back end to crack down on it, but it's running rampant.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I hate to see anyone harmed by it. And it is so funny that our emails we think are so great, secure, but they can be hacked so easily.
Right.
So let's talk about technology and title. I remember right before COVID, you guys were going through a major overhaul of your systems and the way that they work. And then about 4 or 5 years before that, because of some regulations with CFPB, you guys went through a major change of that. Are there any major changes going on from the title perspective?
I mean, technology-wise, not as much. I mean, we are utilizing technology like to try to get fraud away. We are implementing a little bit of AI as well. We have one program called Value Check. It's a company we own out of Colorado, and we can put in an address and it'll generate a report saying, hey, this is what's affecting title, and it's all AI driven. So the searching is done AI, but the examining still has to be done by a person, because sometimes you'll look at what it spits out. It's like, whoa. No. We need to help out on that. So I think, utilizing AI in the property research department, I think is going to be something you're going to see a lot of coming up really quick, because if they can just pull that information, put it together, and then also kind of have a little bit of hey, I see that there is a judgment. You may want to call this number and get it cleared, or I see there's an HOA. So letting the system almost help out with the curative process. And then we also we're very fortunate at Tycor, we share an office with the DCS, which is the Digital Closing Solution Group. And that is the raw notaries, remote online notaries, that will allow you to jump on, answer a few questions, make sure that you verify your identity. And then you can sign via remote online notary. You don't have to come into the office. So I think that, those type of things, sometimes, and you know how it is, man, we've been here a long time. Traffic's getting nuts. Sometimes it takes sellers longer to drive to our office than it does to have them sign the appointment. So if we can help them out and create an elevated experience where they can go over to the settlement statement with their escrow officer, if everything looks good, they jump on a computer, they sign their documents as a seller, and they're done, the comfort of their own home, because we understand that people are moving and it's a stressful time when people are moving. If we can do anything to lessen that stress on them, and I think remote online notarization is definitely something that will help in that regard.
So I am going to be honest and say that I'm a little behind the times when it comes to some of these things and my trust of some of these things. But I just purchased an investment property and I did a mobile notary for the purchase because they had to go through a process with it. And I'm like, I don't know about this. I'd rather do it in person, but it was out of state. And so this gal gets on and she asks for my photo ID and verifies it, puts it in the system, the whole thing. And then, yeah, she pops up on a Zoom meeting and she's going through my documents with me and assigning signatures and stuff. And I'm like, wow, I use this stuff all the time for different reasons, but I never thought I could do this part of it that way.
Right.
It's a mind frame change for sure.
It is. And, I think unfortunately, when you're looking at properties, you send everybody the property online. Now, nobody comes in the office and you go through the listing books. They're filling out their loan application online. They're uploading all their documents. Then they come to title and there's, 150 pages they have to sit and sign. So we've been kind of like the last leg. It's been an antiquated system. And I think as more people catch on to, hey, the ease and it really does mitigate the risk of fraud because you're answering questions about a credit report and then getting your ID verified. I think we're going to catch up to the rest of you guys really quick.
Oh, that's really cool. It's nice to see it heading that direction. Let's talk about some best practices because I think the other thing is, you guys are a partner in the transaction with us, and I probably cause you as many headaches as I try and solve. And so let's talk from your perspective and to the agents listening. What can I do up front as an agent in a transaction to make the escrow process smoother while working with escrow and title?
So I think the more information, the better. I mean, if you can let us know, one, is there anything weird about this transaction, or maybe the seller's going
other than the people?
Yeah, exactly. Other than the people, I mean, are the sellers going through a divorce? Are they out of state? Are they out of the country? Is it a deal where maybe one spouse has passed away and the surviving spouse is selling the property? The more we know about that, the better we can handle the transaction. And I do think that now with our implementation of our in-year platform, where it's a secure online portal that clients can go to, just you guys kind of reinforcing what we're doing, because sometimes we want them to fill out the information online and they're, they don't want to log in. They're doing all these things. They think it's a hassle, and we're really not trying to make something else for them to do. It really is a secure process. So just the more information that we have about the transaction, the better. And then in your assistance in getting your clients on board, because oftentimes, buyers and sellers don't know who their title company is. I mean, they filled out, you say, hey, Tycor's great, sweet. That's who we'll use. And all of a sudden somebody's calling them saying, hey, we're handling your transaction. What's your email address? What's the last four of your social? And all this information. Like, what are you talking about, man? And so, if you can communicate with your clients, let them know, hey, Ryan Pulley at Tycor Title, Stacy Griffith at Tycor Title, Ashley Hunter at Tycor Title. They're going to be calling you and asking you these questions. Then it helps us out a lot as well.
Yeah. And I think one of the interesting things, wire fraud in reverse, right, is I've started to make that phone call to my clients and explain who people are and make sure that they've written down the number and not taken it through email. But it is a huge thing to explain why the moving parts are important. And I think that, all of these systems have popped up, that I have to have a login to be able to communicate with escrow so it's secure. And I've had clients say, I don't want to deal with that. Oh, you take care of it. No, I can't do that. It's for your protection. And here's why. And I try to give them examples. Hey, you don't want to lose the 200 grand like the other guy did. This is why you need to take the time to figure this out. But it's a huge point. And a lot of times information doesn't make it full circle. And I've noticed that really kind of stalls up the escrow process when you don't say, hey, this is part of probate or this is a divorce situation. Like, you're absolutely right. You got to make that clear. What red flags do you see in contracts that agents do that jeopardize the deal?
Obviously whether it's and or assignee, those are always ones that are like, okay, great. When they're wholesale deals, nobody really, those are all interesting to see. Some, they do close them, but once that happens, it's always a little bit of, okay. And then also, if FIRPTA is checked, the FIRPTA box is checked, the Foreign Investment Real Property Tax Act, if that's checked, because that's a little bit more of a process that we have to go into. Also, in the additional terms, if there's vague language, we're not supposed to interpret the contract. We're supposed to act upon a written instruction. So sometimes when something's a little bit vague in the additional terms, and we go back and then all of a sudden it becomes an issue, like, well, no, that's not what I meant. This is what we wanted to do. So I think, those are the things we always kind of look for. And then also, it's funny as it is, sometimes boxes aren't checked on the contract. And it seems like it's one of the easier things to do is just to check a box. But sometimes we get contracts without it being fully executed in that regard. And it's just one more thing. And again, you think you have a deal set in stone, open up escrow, everybody's going forward. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, nobody said who's going to pay for this. And there's an issue because nobody wants to pay for it. So I think those are kind of the big red flags that we see on contracts that we just know that, okay, this one might be a little bit more of the to do.
I think I've noticed many times that the listing and buyer's agent throw the escrow officer in the middle, and they're the poor person that has to deal with the dispute back and forth of trying to figure out who's going to do what.
Right.
But you're absolutely right. Blanks of the contract aren't good for anybody. It is the agent doing their job if they lead them. And so definitely agents need to be cognizant of that. You said something interesting about, the information that's listed there. So, as brokers, we really harp on our agents that they need to have the correct name. They need to have those trust documents because you're going to ask for them. And why would I set them up for failure if I don't have them ready to go to provide escrow?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and also on the, we always encourage the agents to order a lien summary report prior to even going on the listing. That way, you know how the property is vested. So if you do see, Ryan Pulliam, trustee of the Ryan Pulliam Trust, and all of a sudden you're meeting with Ashley, well, okay, what's going on here? Let's find out what the trust documents are. Also, LLC documents. We need to know who's the actual signer, who's authorized to sign on behalf of the LLC. So the entity docs, and that is something too. Going back to your previous question about what we see when a contract is executed and it's the Pulliam company as opposed to Ryan Pulliam president or Ryan Pulliam manager, that's always an issue because then we have to go get the entity docs, make sure that whoever signed is authorized to sign. And there was a story just this was probably about 2 months ago. Locally, it wasn't us; it was another title company. They closed on a transaction. Seller was an LLC, and I don't know how or what or where or why the entity docs that maybe just weren't checked. And the LLC came back and said, hey, listen, the person who signed wasn't authorized to sign per our entity documents. They didn't want to sell the property. So one other thing that kind of when you bring up when we ask for things to aid in that, it's not because we're curious about what your trust looks like. It's because we need to make sure that whomever is signing on behalf of that trust is actually authorized to do so.
And you have to because you're insuring it, right? I mean, the whole point of insurance is that when that goes wrong because it wasn't done right, someone's going to call that policy and say, hey, help us out. And so let's talk a little bit about title insurance.
Yeah.
If I was like a third grader, which I am, explain to me rudimentarily what title insurance really is. Like let's say, start from the seller's perspective. What does a owner's title policy do?
So it's funny because the owner's title policy actually protects the new buyer. So in Clark County, customarily, the seller provides the new buyer an owner policy of title insurance, and it just gives them peace of mind and is ensuring that nobody else has an ownership interest in the property. And so that means that there isn't maybe Nevada is a community property state. There wasn't a spouse that never deeded off on a property that came back and said, hey, this is mine. Or if there are heirs to through if somebody passed away, an heir said, hey, listen, I have a will, I was supposed to get this property. All those things that can pop up down the road. And like you talked about earlier too, not to mention like easements and lot lines, all that stuff. But primarily it's just to make sure that when you're taking a piece of property, you have the peace of mind knowing that it's free and marketable or clear and marketable. And that if any issues do arise, you have a title policy in place that will cover loss, if any, or at the very least, fight against it.
Makes sense. I love it. And then on the lender side, why do I have to get a lender policy? I mean, don't I already have the seller's policy?
So the seller policy protects the new owner. And like we talked about, the lender policy, if there's a loan involved, Chris, I'm not going to loan you $500,000 if I think somebody is owed $30,000 before me. And so we call it first position. The lender wants to make sure that they're in first position. And as a title company, we're ensuring them that they're in first position. So if something happens and there's an old deed of trust that comes in and forecloses, the lender won't get wiped out and lose out on their encumbrance of the property. So the lender policy protects that the lender's actually in first position and nobody else has a financial interest prior to them.
Makes sense. Okay, so liability wise, when it comes to the agents, what things do agents do to create liability for you guys that just infuriates you?
I mean, liability wise is when they're wanting to try to use their own notaries. That's a big one for us that we just won't do because you never know. I'm not saying all notaries are bad, but we have a vetting process. Their bond has to be a certain amount. So if an agent is saying, "Hey, listen, I need to use file notary," that's that creates a headache, and we don't want that to be a liability. Also, if they are, again, kind of going back to the communication, getting close to signing, we're trying to get the sellers to sign, and all of a sudden it's like, oh no, they're out of state, and it'll just delay the closing because we have to get the docs out, get them back, and it's just a hassle. So I think that when agents maybe try to cut corners and just say, oh, you don't need that. Don't worry, I've known these guys my entire life. I've known them for
Oh,
a
of
while.
course.
You don't need that information. They are who they say they are. That's when the liability occurs because again, we don't want to say no to our clients and make it a hassle, but at the same time, like you said, we're insuring the property and we have to do everything we can to mitigate risk.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. One of the questions that keeps coming up is, when is the time I start engaging the title company in the course of the transaction? And there's a lot of parts that, only when the deal goes into escrow. And I think that you've said earlier, there's so much value you as a company bring to me before the transaction actually occurs because of doing the research and the investigative work to find out, is this person in front of me the person that actually owns the property? You are a resource for that. But even before then, before I even find that client, you guys provide resource tools to help me prospect for more business that hopefully generates more escrows. Talk a little bit about the things you can help me do from the creation standpoint.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we really have a passion about on the sales team is, I mean, like I said, I came up through title, so I love looking at chains and trying to figure things out. But majority of the folks on our sales team don't have that background, and they are just wanting to create value to the agents. And I think one of the biggest ways to create value is to help the agent save time, save money, and generate more transactions. So when you kind of sit down, depending on where you are in your business, obviously, if you're a newer agent starting out, you have a lot more time than you have money. So, hey, let's find out ways to door knock. Let's do open house strategies. Let's get some ideas going that aren't going to cost you a lot of money, but will still get you out in front of folks and allow you to prospect and try to generate some business. And then on the other end of the spectrum, if you already have a ton of business, you got a good book, but you're just burning the candles at both ends. We want to help you develop systems and provide you with some resources that maybe can streamline your process and make it more efficient. And so it really does determine, where you are in your business, what your lead generation strategy is. And what we've done, we pride ourselves in being the biggest business to business connector in the real estate space, because I can call somebody in Phoenix, Arizona and say, hey, I got a guy who really wants to do well in open houses. What's your best guy doing there? And then they'll share with me that. And I can sit down with an agent and say, this is what you want to do. And this is exactly, just give them a playbook to run and help them generate more transactions.
So tell me some of the tools that you guys utilize to help me as an agent do some of that. I know you guys have an app. I know that you guys have a NetSheet app. Just tell me some of the products that are out there.
Yeah, so I mean, Tigor Agent is probably our best one. It's a NetSheet app, but it does a lot more. Just because I truly believe that nobody got into real estate because they love math, but buyers want to know how much it's going to cost me, and sellers want to know how much am I getting net. And Tigor Agent allows you to have those conversations and not take the place of the lender. But Chris, you're out, you're at a party. Somebody says, "Oh, you sell real estate. What's the market like? What can I do? What can I get for about this much money a month?" And you can plug that into our program and give them, say, hey, 5, 10, 15, 20% down. This is how much house you can afford. That conversation may turn into an actual buyer, as opposed to just, hey, let me get in contact with my lender and then just disappear. So, Tigor Agent, if you really utilize it to what it is, I think it's one of the most powerful tools in the business. Tigor Live Farm is a great way to not only just kind of farm your neighborhood and really actively know what's happening, but you can identify life events. Right now, even though inventory is increasing with prices, maybe some sellers are a little bit more aspirational. If you have a seller that needs to move, then the odds are they're going to price it at market and hopefully get it sold as fast as possible. And so when you can identify life events happening in those neighborhoods and identify people who are going through a life event, hey, I'm not calling and saying, hey, sorry about your divorce. What are you doing with the asset? But just, hey, I'm Ryan Pulliam. I'm just calling all your neighbors to let them know how much your house may be worth in today's market. Would that be an interest of you? And so kind of bringing those strategies in. And also just kind of, we really like to get down and dirty with the, hey, what do you do? What's your strategy with this? Send this letter out to your open house. Use this when you're door knocking. So that's what I get really excited about when I get to talk to agents about helping them generate more transactions. Because again, that's what we want. We want more transactions over at Tigor Title.
Yeah, and I can't explain how many benefits I've gotten from the net sheet app, and I use it every day on most of my business. I mean, I'm creating net sheets back and forth for clients. It's such an easy tool because it allows me to create the content and then put it in a well presented process, and then I can text it, I can email it, the whole thing. So that's been invaluable. And I haven't used the live agent farm as much, only because my marketing rep with Tycor does so much for me. I'm sure she's using it, but it's just become part of my process. I take a listing, I find out what tools you guys have that provide me additional incentive to go out and market that listing. It's been huge. And I can look back and say these transactions were created because of your participation in my business. And yeah, I mean, my job then is to explain how wonderful you've been to the process, to my client and the consumer, so that hopefully they see the value of utilizing your service like I do. But it's invaluable. You should always involve your title company as soon as you can to create more business.
Well, I appreciate that, Chris, because I think unfortunately some people look at us as a vendor, and it's just something that it's a necessary part of the transaction. But if you really truly sit down and talk with us, spend 15 minutes with us for us to share what exactly we can do for your business, and it might not be anything. Maybe you're thinking like, oh, you know what, go pound sand, Ryan. That doesn't sound good. I'm never going to do that. Hey, totally cool. We're not going to waste your time. Just like I don't want you to waste mine. But you may have something that's like, man, I never thought about it that, or I've never really thought about doing that. I'm going to try that. And like you said, you can get a listing or two to pop, or maybe identify a buyer.
Yeah, it's huge. All right, let's shift gears for a minute and talk a little bit more about the marketplace. And so, we've been in this period of time for the last, I don't know, 7, 8 years where we've never seen so much positive equity in properties. And what's now happening is, people are deciding they want to move on or move up or move down, or change investment strategy. And so, have you seen a major uptick in 1031 exchanges than we saw years back?
Yeah, so we have a sister company, IPX 1031. Sarah Remley is our local rep. She's also in our office. We've done a really good job subletting a lot of our space to try to cut costs. But she's in here. I mean, and just seeing how many people are coming in just to meet with her, it's unreal. So the 1031 exchange is huge because there is so much equity, like you said, and people don't want the tax ramifications on that, and they need to identify another property and throw that in. So for the agents end, it's great because it's virtually guaranteed at least two commissions. But it's also just good for an investor. Then we're also seeing some folks try to take a big chunk, sell one property, and then identify 3 or 4 properties. And so it really is kind of one of those deals where it's happening a lot right now. And it's encouraging to see. But yeah, Sarah Remley from IPX, she's busy nonstop.
How about in the new home construction phase? What kind of things are you guys seeing in new home, or maybe just vacant land?
So new home, yeah, obviously new homes, because they were able to offer such a low interest rate right now. We saw a big increase. It seems like that slowed a little bit as of late. I don't know if it's just they're catching up with their buildings or what, but we're not seeing as many. We handle a couple new home tracks, and we haven't seen as many new builds coming through the door, which is their prices are still so high, but with that interest rate, it kind of sometimes it balances out. So I think buyers just have so much more choice, whereas before there wasn't a whole lot on the market. New build, hey, you know what, it's worth it, and the interest rate's low, it works out for my monthly payment. Now I think buyers, with inventory increasing, they do have a little bit more to look at, so they're not pulling the trigger as quick. But for the new build and vacant land is something where typically the new home builder will purchase the land, they'll get title insurance on the land, and then they'll subdivide it. So it's just been insured. So the risk for title insurance on a new home isn't bad at all. The biggest thing that you kind of have to watch out for on a new build is the mechanics leads, making sure that those they pay their subs, and nobody files a mechanics lien saying, hey, we didn't get paid doing for the work we've done. But the majority of the builders that we work with, we obviously have taken a look at their financials. They're reputable, and we never have any issues with that.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Like, if they did pay the heating contractor, did all the heating units, and then they want their money, they're going to leave the properties or try to.
100%. Yes.
Makes a lot of sense. I want to share a quick story that happened between you and I when it comes to vacant land. And so part of my business has always been vacant land. I love the fact the inspections are really easy. Go out and look at the dirt. These are the jokes. I had a buyer that was looking for a piece of land in the Northwest. I identified a parcel, didn't think it would really fit price wise, but I still wanted to engage it. And I reached out to you through Ashley. And I just said, hey, what info can you give me on this piece of land? Can you give me any contact info? And like within maybe 5 minutes, I got back an email from you that was two phone numbers for the client, their name, and I believe an email address as well. And I literally picked up the phone, I dialed the number, and the guy answered. And I said, "Hey, I'm Chris Bishop. I'm a realtor with Signature. I'm calling about this parcel of land. I have a client looking in the area. Any interest in selling it?" And he goes, "Yeah." And within about a week, I had listed the parcel, got it on the market, and it was like a $1.4 million parcel. And I bring up the story because if I hadn't made the phone call to my title rep and gone through the process, I probably wouldn't have gone and Googled and tried to do that. But you've found some great resources to make that all happen. Tell me a little bit about what happened on your side that made it come together.
Well, I mean, whenever Ashley says, "Hey, Chris needs something," we always say we have A clients, B clients, C clients. You're a DES, drop everything. So when you call, we drop everything and get it done. But no, so but like I said, I love research. I do love looking at a piece of property and find out. So I was able to just kind of take that information, ran it through a couple of our databases, and found what I thought to be decent contact info, and got it over to you. So it's amazing what you can find through, it's just amazing what you can find when you know kind of how to look and what to look for. So those are the kind of things. And a lot of times, if vacant land is owned in an LLC, it's finding the end, the managing member, the president, and those are the ones that really get fun because then you get to go to the Secretary of State, try to find out them and go off from there. So I love doing stuff like that. And especially knowing that you got your $1.4 million listing is a good thing.
The only downside was I got it listed and a couple months went by. We actually even got an offer. And the client decided to not sell because the thing that they were going to do didn't pan out. And so I don't blame anyone but them for that. But the whole point was it did create a transaction that did create value. And I look every day for that one more deal, one more deal. Where can it come from? And you guys are a big part of that in any aspect that I put into it, whether I'm farming or I'm prospecting or any of it. We're going to shift down a little bit to just talk for a second about probate, dealing with wills and trusts. And one of the biggest issues I've seen lately is that an agent says, "Well, my client, their parent passed away, left them the property in their will," and they don't really know from that point, well, what do I do? And so, what is it the title will really look for in the going through the process to designate? Does it need to go through probate or not?
Yeah, so it all comes down to how the property is vested. And so we talk about ordering a lien summary report prior to the listing appointment to really understand that if it is if I own my property as an individual,
Yeah.
it's going through to probate because there's not a joint tenant, a surviving joint tenant. So if you own a property in joint tenancy, one person passes away, that surviving joint tenant is they keep it. I mean, they're surviving joint tenant. If it's tenants in common, meaning that I can sell my 50% to you, Chris, and somebody else can sell their 50% somewhere else. If I'm an individual, it has to go through my 50% has to go through probate. And so what it really gets sad is when maybe a wife had to deed off the property. So they were going to refi. She wasn't going to be on the loan. So she quit claimed off when they refied, never got put back on. And so when the husband passed away, the wife thinks she had the title of the property. And unfortunately, no, it had to go through probate because it was married man sold a separate property. So the only time that a property can pass to somebody who after they passed away is if they're a trustee of the trust or a successor trustee of the trust. So that's how the trust is created to secure those assets and make sure that whatever happens after the original trustees pass, there's a plan in place and they can do this. So if somebody just says, "Hey, yeah, you know what, I left them in my will, I can sell it." That's not the case because again, we go back to, was that the last will? Did he also tell another brother? And so we have to go through the probate process to make sure there's all the heirs and anybody who may have had a claim to the property are notified, going through it, and then the judge will then actually order the sale. So if I'm obviously not giving legal advice whatsoever, but if you want to make sure your property is secure, call a real estate attorney, get a trust set up, and that way you know for sure. There's also transfer upon deaths. Those have been a thing over the past few years now too, where I record a deed on my property saying that upon my death, immediately the property transfers to my son Reed. Well, that's totally fine, but in order for us to ensure it, again, we have to do a posting process. We have to make sure that anybody who may have an interest, because the title can't come back to me and say, hey, did you really want this property to go to Reed when you passed away? Because I'm dead, obviously. So if that's the case, then there's a lot of other things that our underwriter needs to do in order for us to be able to insure that property. So if clean, being a trust, if it's not a trust and somebody passes away, 99 out of 100 times we're going to go through probate.
It's a huge point because ownership and transfer of ownership are two different things.
Correct.
By the look of the deed, I own this property. There's no question. I've had it for 10 years. I'm collecting the rents, the whole thing. But it's a different story when I go to transfer that asset and want it to be insured. And you see a lot of people get really, unfortunately, creative where they try to do private transfers and things like that. Well, the problem is now down the road, you have to go back through all of that to be able to insure the property. And that's where the real problems start because if I want a federal loan or things like that, where this investor is putting up a big chunk of money, they're not going to sell it to me unless I have title insurance because they're not going to take a chance unless the risk is worth the reward. I just had the exact scenario where I had a client whose husband had passed away. And the first thing I did, because it only showed her name on the deed, but I knew that he had passed away, is I sent it to my title person at Tycor and I said, can this property be transferred by this person? She said, yes, it's right or survivorship on the deed that they have. And so she eliminated that whole issue that my client was kind of freaked out about. What am I going to do? What do I have to do? And to me, that's like the first step before I go down the road of getting it listed and getting a buyer all excited, and then I can't sell it. Now I have all of these problems. Why would you engage your title person, right?
Exactly.
Let's talk real quick about power of attorneys, because this is another misconception I think I see all the time is, well, we went down to legalforms.com and we got a power of attorney. Now we can do whatever we want with mom's house. Sometimes these power of attorneys are not legal. They're not properly executed. They're not the right power of attorney. I know that there's several. Do you guys see that a lot when people bring these in and to say, hey, I've got the right to do this because I have it?
Yeah, absolutely. And we always go back to the person who's giving that power, granting that power of attorney to the attorney, in fact, to make sure, are they of sound mind and judgment? Sometimes you get to a place where, mom's old, she can't write or something along those lines. She has full capacity, totally is with it. And yeah, they just granted power of attorney to a son or a daughter to make the process easier. We sometimes get it where people kind of bring in after the person has passed away with a power of attorney, and those are null and void. After the person's passed away, that power of attorney, dead person can't give you power of attorney. So we see that a little bit more often than you'd think, but we do have to just verify that, and underwriting has to get involved and make sure that how old's the power of attorney? Does it specific to the property address? I mean, we would love it if something along those lines needs to happen, and when we have an open escrow and they don't want to sign everything, let us drop the power of attorney, instruct us to drop the power of attorney. We'll send an approved notary there. We'll double check and everything's good. Sometimes when folks are, out of the country, we have some folks serving in the military overseas and they're buying a house. Well, they give their spouse power of attorney to sign on their behalf. And that's totally cool. So we recognize those ones. Yes, the ones that come in and say, my mom gave me power of attorney, she passed away, now I want to sell her house. Or it's like, sorry, pal.
Yeah, it happens. It happens way too often. It's crazy, and that's always my go-to. Having vetted this document with your title person to look and see if they can pay it with this document. And so that's always a good first question, not a question down the road. All right, let's talk about relationships. And I have always felt, and knowing you for 20 plus years, that the relationship is built on trust and partnership. And so what is it that you look for in a real estate agent? What expectations do you have to be a good partner with your company?
It's funny, Chris, when I started in sales, they said, Ryan, get out there. The good news is there's no loyalty. And they said, but the bad news is there's no loyalty. And I know there's definitely people who buck that trend. And Chris, you're definitely one of them. But it's somebody who just, again, views us as a part of their team, not a service provider. We're thinking we're all the same, or, a donut dolly. The only time they call you is when they need, breakfast brought in for a meeting or something along those lines. So somebody who is really willing to get in the trenches with us. I mean, we want to bring you and your agents resources that are going to help them generate more transactions. If somebody waves their hand and says, yes, I'm going to try that, they're going to be the person that I go to, first with all new ideas, products, or solutions, because I know they're actually going to utilize them. So, again, we understand that nobody's going to get we're not going to get 100% of every one of our clients' business, but we also want to make it to where we provide so much value that the agent fights for us to get that deal. Because I tell you what, Chris, again, there's so many new title companies done. you're not just giving us an escrow, a transaction, a deal. You're giving us your paycheck. And if everything goes okay over the next 30 to 45 days, you're going to get paid. I wouldn't want to just go down to some bank I've never heard of, deposit my paycheck into some bank I've never heard of. So people who kind of understand the value that we can provide, not just on the front end by helping you generate the transactions, but, escrow officers like Stacy and all the gals that we have behind us really working hard to get the deals closed, who are knowledgeable, who can identify things that may be an issue, kill monsters while they're small. And so just, again, who understands the value that we can provide and looks at us as a partner. That would be ideal.
It was always my practice, as I grew my team and went through the process, like I looked at my marketing rep from my title company as part of my team because they are helping support all the individuals in my group do more deals. And whether I had a large group or a small group, when I'd have a meeting, a team meeting, I would always invite them because they provide so much value to have that. I've even had my favorite escrow officer come to my team meeting and explain to my group things they're seeing and stop doing this and start doing that. Because it's about information and their participation. What I see as an agent is if my title company is willing to participate with me in the small things, then it's building a bigger relationship, and I think I've been using Tycor Title since back when Susan Batchelder was the marketing rep. And that's,
wow.
Yeah, that's 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's not because that they're the only people in town. I do believe your motto. You are very resourceful. You guys go out and you try to find ways to create more value and make that happen. What can I expect in the future of Tycor? Like, what is the plan for the company? What are you focused on? Maybe for those that currently use the company and they're looking for evolution. What are your thoughts on that?
So, we have a few years ago, our parent company, Fidelity National Financial, they kind of put a lot of stake into ensuring that the real estate professional is at the very center of the transaction. We truly believe that the consumer is best served when there is a licensed professional guiding them through this process because there's a lot that goes into it. And so we wanted to just invest in resources to help the agent to secure their place in the center. So we've dedicated a lot of our efforts into our platform in here. And so right now, it's the start in here where we upload the information. We'll get the information about the clients, the close in here where you can track your transaction from beginning to end. The notarizing here, utilizing those remote online notaries. And then the next step, which hopefully will be released in the local valley here, maybe Q4 of this year, is living here. And that is for the consumer to go and have everything you need to know about your home is in here. Anytime that you need to hire a handyman, the information's in here. The specs of your home in here. What kind of light bulbs you're using, everything is in here. And the real estate agent is going to be the conduit to have the consumer utilize that program. So it's just going to keep reintroducing the real estate professional because, again, we want to make sure that real estate professional is centered to that transaction. So I think on the consumer end, that's where we're kind of heading on that. In fact, I know that's where we're heading. And then I do believe that we're going to see more AI, more automation through the research, maybe not the examination and the curative, but we are going to be able to become more efficient to be able to get you, and just it's easier to use us. And I think that's the biggest thing is that anybody out there can close an easy deal, but not all deals are easy. You want to make sure that the folks that you're working with have the expertise to close those. And so if we can kind of, maybe streamline our process a little bit on the front end so we can provide more value on that middle and the back end and the closing end, I think that's going to be great. So look for big things coming from us. We're very excited about in here and what it's going to mean for the consumer, the real estate professional, and Tycor Title.
Okay, last major question before we wrap up, final thoughts. Brand new agent, just got my license 2 days ago, just joined the board of realtors, just got my key. What are your food for thought that they should be doing when it relates to title?
When it relates to title is, meeting and understanding, because that's the whole point is that somebody, the value that the agent provides to the consumer is helping them sell them and then also navigating through the home buyer selling process. So if you don't know what happens in escrow, everybody thinks, the deal's not done when you open escrow. That's when really the going gets tough because you got to get it across the finish line. So kind of understanding what we do on the back end, understanding our resources to make it easier, and just getting a really broad view. I mean, I know you guys do so much training, and I think that's invaluable to agents because one, you have to learn how to be an agent, but also you have to understand what the market's doing, how it's changing. And, the market that we're in right now is completely different than the market we were in March and April. I mean, so it goes that fast, and having resources like your agents have, is huge. And then partnering with us and having them meet with us about, hey, this is what we're seeing in the market, but also this is what you need to be careful about, because one of the, if you're a new agent, and somebody says, "Hey, Chris, I want to. I'm coming to town. I want to buy 5 properties cash. Here's my attached as my proof of funds." If you're a new agent, you're clicking that faster than anything, and all of a sudden, that's when you're infected and you're getting looked at. So, just to kind of just understand what's going on, I think a new agent would be just best served to sit down with somebody from our company, let them know what it's available to them and how we can help them out in their business.
Ryan, as always, thank you so much. You've always been a wealth of knowledge and information, as is Tycor. Just final thoughts, wrapping up on the title industry. What do you want every agent that's listening to know?
Just who you work with matters. I know that, again, deals are sometimes few and far between right now, and you don't want to maybe shake the trees, but I would much rather deal with a company who's going to help you cross the finish line than somebody that you've never heard of, but hey, I got to get this deal done. So who you work with matters. And again, a couple of years down the road, when your client's upset because there's a claim on the property because the title company may not have cost something, that's gonna, they're gonna come back on you. So I would just say who you work with matters, and that's all. I'll leave it there.
I love it. I will definitely say from my perspective that you guys are an integral part of my team, a huge part of my business of creation and preservation of that business. And so, yeah, you're right. Who you work with matters. And one of the first things I did, when I elevated to a certain level, was I created a relationship where I could depend on somebody. It's not about dollars in your pocket or any of that random crap. It's about the fact when I call, you answer the phone or you get back to me. And I've always felt that everyone in your company from the top all the way down is accessible, and I can get them on the phone and we'll have a real life conversation, not just drown in emails. So I'd say that if you don't have that relationship with your title person, then you may be in the wrong place. Ryan, again, thank you so much. Congratulations to Tycor and all you guys are doing. Congratulations to you on your engagement, and we'll hope to see you around the company soon. And so for all of those of you out there, just remember, we're always here reaffirming your success. Make it a great week.